Counseling 6303, Introduction to Human Sexuality, Chapter 1, Perspectives on Sexuality, presented by Dr. John Spody for Houston Baptist University. Chapter 1, Sexual Intelligence. There are four components of sexual intelligence. First, understanding yourself. Second, having interpersonal sexual skills and integrity. Third, obtaining accurate scientific knowledge. And fourth, having consideration of the cultural context. Sexual intelligence abilities help us make responsible decisions in sexual behavior. A psychosocial orientation. Psychosocial approach is a combination of psychology and social factors. Psychological factors include emotions, attitudes, and motivations. Social conditioning factors are defined as the process with which we learn our social norms. Biological factors include hormones, nervous systems, genetics, and more. Controversy and diversity in human sexuality. The United States. Many factors contribute to diverse sexual attitudes and behaviors in the United States. Some of these factors include the wide range of ethnic and religious groups, the wide range of values within the United States, varying degrees of education and socioeconomic status, and intergroup differences. One of the questions we should consider as a class is, why is it important to be inclusive when accounting for human sexuality? We should also consider questions such as, what factors contribute to diversity and similarity of sexual attitudes and behaviors within the United States? China and some of its ancient history. China is known to have produced some of the earliest known sex manuals. Under Taoism, sexual activity was performed for spiritual growth and harmony. Sexual connections of men and women was believed to join the opposing forces of yin for female and yang for male. Sexual conservatism and communist rule, 1949. During this part of China's history, there was a lack of basic information about sexuality. Sex outside of marriage and frequent sex within marriage was discouraged. There was also a decline in STDs. Current trends in China: they're slightly more open to homosexuality, increased premarital sex, abortion, and HIV infection rates. Our cultural legacy: sex for procreation and rigid gender roles. Sex for procreation. Anything other than a penis and a vagina is not sex. Male and female gender roles. Rigid gender role conditioning can limit each person's potential and can harm their sexuality. A question that we should be considering as a class is, what importance do the historical themes of sex for procreation and male-female gender roles have on us today? Sexuality in the Western world, a historical perspective. Judaic and Christian traditions. Ancient Hebrews. Gender roles were highly specialized, and procreation was essential. For Christianity, spirituality through celibacy is acceptable, sex outside of marriage is sinful, and the contradictory images of women have emerged. For example, the Virgin Mary, who is compassionate, pure, and unattainable, versus Eve, who is the evil temptress from Genesis. Sexuality in the Western world, a historical perspective continued. A sex-positive shift. during the Protestant Reformation, valued sex and marriage. Enlightenment and scientific rationalism. Value of sex and marriage goes beyond procreation and increased respect for women. The Victorian era. Some of the major themes from this time frame include the women's role was polarized between the images of Mary or the Madonna and Eve, the temptress. There was a distance between husband and wife. Intensely passionate friendships sometimes developed between women. Prostitution flourished during this time period. Mosher's research contradicts prevailing view. Victorian women experienced sexual desire, enjoyed intercourse, and experienced orgasm. 20th century sexuality. The beginning of the 20th century. At the beginning of the 20th century, a couple of important things to note include the passage of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, and the Great Depression led to more restrained behavior sexually. After World War II, post-war retreat into traditional gender roles occurred. Men returned to the workplace, and women devoted themselves to their homes, children, and husbands. 20th century sexuality continued. The times they are a-changin'. In the 1960s and 70s, the sexual revolution confronted the norms of previous decades. Numerous contraceptives were introduced. Also, attitudes began to change towards homosexuality. Gays and lesbians began to openly declare their sexual orientation. The media and sexuality. Over the years, television has seen an increase in sexual content. Music videos overtly and explicitly include sexual content. Advertising has subtle and blatant content related to sexuality. And magazines, content may promote stereotypical gender roles, body image insecurity, and superficiality. Some of the questions we should consider include: how have mass media reflected and influenced sexual norms in our society? Another question we should consider is, compared to other mass media, which elements are unique to sexuality on the internet? Broken taboos. In the slide below, you see the evolution of broken taboos on TV, also known as the firsts. In 1952, the first pregnancy was seen on TV. In 1972, the first primetime abortion. In 1974, the first graphic rape scene. In 1975, the first interracial couple. And in 1978, the first transgender character. The Internet and sexuality. Potentially epic impact of sexual attitudes can be traced back to the Internet. Almost 2.8 billion Internet users worldwide. Social networking has skyrocketed with such interfaces as Facebook. Sexually explicit self-expression, fantasies, adult interactive games, etc. have been included on the Internet. And there's an increased availability on handheld devices to access the Internet, such as our cell phones and tablets. Sexuality, where the personal is political. The personal and political are truly merged when it comes to sexuality. There are concerns about the impact of social norms, increased freedoms and responsibilities, and controversies regarding social policies, laws, and ethics. One of the most recent controversies that's being discussed is the concern of transgender use of bathroom facilities in public places. Summary. Sexual intelligence involves understanding oneself sexually and having interpersonal sexual skills and integrity. This includes abilities to help make responsible decisions about sexual behavior based on values. The 20th century changes led to contemporary individuals' increased ability to make personal sexual decisions. These include scientific, psychological, and social perspectives.